Will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
The people of Great Britain say farewell to their queen as the world pays respect to a celebrated leader. From Queen Elizabeth's remarkable reign to the future of the monarchy, CBS News.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. It's good to be with you. Thank you for joining us. Here's a look at some of the stories that we're watching right now. Attorneys for former President Trump are trying to prevent Justice Department investigators from reviewing documents taken from his part-time residence. At issue, over 100 records marked confidential, top secret, or secret. The list of dignitaries who have been invited and are expected to attend the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II next week is coming together. President Biden says he will attend, along with the First Lady. Russia's President Putin will not. After a series of counteroffensives, Ukrainian forces appear to have pushed the Russian military into retreat. More on what the Kremlin says is a regrouping and what it could mean for Russia's offensive going forward. And later this hour, with the last primaries ahead of the midterms on the way tomorrow, why New Hampshire finds itself with some of the most fascinating contests, despite being one of the smallest states in the union. But we begin tonight with lawyers for the former president responding to the Justice Department's request to keep examining documents taken from his private residence. They did not specify why the Trump team objected to the recommendations. The lawyers, however, did say, quote, there are specific reasons why those nominees are not preferred. A federal judge granted the former president's request for a special master last week, ordering the Justice Department to temporarily stop using some of those documents obtained in the search of Mar-a-Lago. In a separate court filing earlier Monday, Trump's legal team asked a federal judge to keep that block in place. They also condemned the investigation of Mr. Trump as, quote, unprecedented and misguided. And the DOJ's January 6th investigation, 40 people who have been associated with former President Trump have received subpoenas. They mark a significant escalation in the department's investigation into the Capitol riot. For more on this, Scott MacFarlane joins us now. He's CBS News congressional correspondent. Hey, Scott, good to see you. So what can you tell us about these 40 new subpoenas from the House Select Committee investigating January 6th?
These subpoenas actually come from a grand jury, the U.S. Justice Department here in Washington, D.C. This will be separate than the House January 6th Select Committee. at least 30 subpoenas, could be close to 40. It will likely include some number of people who were also subpoenaed by the House January 6 Select Committee in its parallel but separate investigation. We know this grand jury is investigating any number of things, but the investigation has branched into this effort to provide or submit fake electors ahead of January 6 to Congress, but also into the money that was raised in large amounts after November 3rd, 2020, in the name of overturning the election, in the name of the Save America PAC, among other vessels and vehicles to raise money. So the grand jury subpoenas have gone out, some of them, if not most of them, in the past week, making this, Caitlin, a significant escalation into an already large investigation that's picking up speed.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Scott. It's a good reminder of all of these parallel investigations going on. I want to ask about these January 6 prosecutions. Where does the DOJ stand with some of those?
Yeah, the prosecutions from January 6th are also growing in size. In terms of numbers, there are roughly 870 federal defendants so far, and the Justice Department has been pretty clear. They expect dozens or hundreds more to be added to the list. The biggest trial so far into the accused Oath Keepers seditious conspirators, that begins this month. Set for the final week of September. It could last a month, but these are defendants accused of coordinating and plotting and raising money. There's that phrase again, raising money after the election to be disruptive, if not violent, on January 6th. It's easy to conflate the two, but there are these two separate investigations, both of which are picking up steam. The Justice Department grand jury investigation into the fake electors and into the money raised and spent after November 3rd, 2020, and the January 6th Select Committee, which, oh, by the way, Caitlin, is likely to have its next public hearing that same week, the final week of September.
We will be watching for sure. Meanwhile, we've also been talking about these documents taken at Mar-a-Lago. Can you walk us through this motion where you had former President Trump's lawyers objecting to the Justice Department's pick for a special master, this third party to look at these documents?
Yeah, now a separate investigation, yet another one. This is the one in the Southern District of Florida in the federal court there. The Trump legal team today filed a motion, as scheduled and as expected, asking the judge there to continue freezing the Justice Department's review of those seized records from August 8th from Mar-a-Lago, arguing that a special master, an independent third party, should review the records first, go through them, see what needs to be segregated, see what needs to be pulled out, that the criminal investigation involving those records should remain on hold, as ordered earlier this month by Florida federal Judge Eileen Cannon. The Trump legal team also asked the judge to reject the two suggested special masters, the names offered by the Justice Department. But the Trump defense team wouldn't say why, saying they'd rather provide that rationale privately, or as they call it, in camera with the judge and the prosecutor, so as not to make a public document with their concerns about Judge Barbara Jones of New York City and retired appellate Judge Thomas Griffith of Washington, D.C. The Justice Department will weigh in on both of these requests from the Trump legal team, likely late tonight, if not later this week. Here's the thing, Caitlin. The legal filings keep coming. The clock keeps ticking, and there's no end date for this already long legal battle.
And Scott, what were former President Trump's lawyers arguing in an earlier filing on Monday? They were calling this investigation misguided.
Yeah, and that is the reason they're giving for why the judge should keep that hold in place to prevent the Justice Department from going into those records they seized August 8th to further their criminal investigation. They're arguing, the Trump legal team is, that it's a misguided investigation, that it's grown out of proportion or grown too far and too wide, and that it should remain contained by the federal judge. Again, the Justice Department will have its chance to respond to this, but this is yet another battlefront in which there is another pile of paper coming, and another hearing likely to come, and another extension likely to come. This is another part of this investigation that is going to grow in size, not just in terms of the number of filings, but the time expended to it.
So many investigations, so many threads. Scott MacFarlane, we're grateful that you were reporting on all of it for us. Thanks so much for your time. For more on this, Keir Dougal joins us now. He's the CBS News legal contributor. Hey, Keir, good to see you. So what's the basis of Trump's appeal to halt this DOJ review of documents that they took from Mar-a-Lago?
So the concern here is over who is going to be looking at these documents. In the typical case, the Justice Department does this. Here, the Justice Department was authorized by the search warrant, but because we're talking about the former president, his claim is that an independent third-party special master should be the body, the person who's reviewing these records and separating them into the buckets, perhaps for privilege, perhaps for executive privilege, and for a classification review. So that's the basic claim.
And I think all eyes are on Attorney General Merrick Garland and what is he going to do? So what are some of those potential landmines that he may be facing in deciding whether or not to prosecute the former president?
Right. So, first of all, we need to say that the President Trump may never be he might never be prosecuted. But the issues for Attorney General Garland, I think, the landmines, perhaps, are at 100,000 feet, balancing concerns about the rule of law against concerns about the appearance of political bias, which is also driving this document review issue. So in a nation of laws, even a former president who's committed crimes should expect to be prosecuted. But here it's difficult, I think, to separate the prosecutor from any potential indictment. And so you would have a scenario where the current administration would be prosecuting a former administration. So I think that Attorney General Garland here will be looking for, before making any decision, will be looking for extremely high quality evidence, which is something that is a bit of an art among prosecutors. You can have evidence that would technically satisfy a case, but let's remember what caused President Richard Nixon to resign. It was hours and hours of tapes, very high quality evidence that led to his resignation and pardon. I would think that the Attorney General here would want, just as a matter of proof and as a matter of satisfying the public, to have extremely high quality evidence here, not necessarily tapes, but not just, a single witness.
And Keir, going back to this investigation as it stands, of course, the former president had asked for a so-called special master, this kind of third party, to review these documents. The DOJ and lawyers for President Trump, former President Trump, have submitted each of their picks for that special master late last week. Can you give us a take on some of the names submitted? Who are they, and anyone that stands out?
Yes. So they all appear to be qualified by judicial and or prosecutorial experience. But the name that jumped out to me was President Trump's candidate, Judge Raymond J. Dearie. Among the candidates, he is the only active judge. That's one reason why he stuck out for me. And the other reason is that I have tried 2 criminal jury cases in front of Judge Dearie in his courtroom. And I can assure our audience that Judge Dearie is fair, he's smart, he is apolitical, and he will take nonsense from absolutely no one. And because he was former President Trump's pick, were the DOJ to agree to him, it would take away potential arguments by the former president if Judge Dearie were to make rulings that the former president didn't like, because after all, Judge Dearie would have been his pick, the president's pick. So I would recommend that the Justice Department accept Judge Dearie pronto.
Well, Keir, this is why we're glad that you are an analyst for us. You have this experience firsthand. I do want to ask a little bit about the January 6th investigation, because a grand jury has subpoenaed several associates of the former president in connection to the DOJ's investigation into January 6th. Why are these subpoenas significant?
So these are subpoenas to relatively high-level officials, as reported, one to Stephen Miller, senior policy advisor, another to a White House political director. So they're signaling a couple of things. One, that the Justice Department's investigation is not at the beginning. The standard, playbook is to start at the bottom end and work your way to the top. These subpoenas, as reported, reflect witnesses who are at, closer to the top. Reportedly, they are involved with the fundraising between the election and the inauguration, based upon the stolen election claims, the incorrect stolen election claims, and also about the fake electors scheme that we've heard about from the January 6th Commission. So these are important subpoenas. They signal an active Justice Department investigation.
All right, Keir Dougal, a lot to unpack with these investigations, a lot to analyze here, and a lot more to come. We're grateful to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
A sudden pullback of Russian forces from Ukrainian territory is raising questions about Moscow's next moves militarily after losing ground in key northeast areas of the country, and if they will choke off oil supplies from Europe. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
This place is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to Satanism and witchcraft and demonism.
Has the church been this divided?
Not in my lifetime. They've been radicalized in their approach to politics.
United in Christ, divided by politics.
We have what I call a cowardly pastor problem because they don't want to get involved in the political situation.
Conservative Christianity and Republicanism have grasped hands in a way that's very unhealthy.
There are churches whose members have divided over partisan politics.
How an evangelical civil war could change the spirit of America.
This was a heavily Christian-influenced attack.
When we have the ability to say that God is on our side, it allows us to justify all kinds of cruelty.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yes. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
President Biden traveled to Boston Monday to promote developments to his administration's cancer moonshot. During remarks at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library, he highlighted the overall goals of the initiative.
The goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% in the next 25 years. To turn more cancers from death sentences into chronic diseases people can live with. To create more supportive experience for patients and families. And to update to update our fight against the cancer.
During his speech, President Biden announced the intention to appoint a director of the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health. He also unveiled an executive order to bolster U.S. biomanufacturing capacity. President Biden's trip comes on the 60th anniversary of President Kennedy's famous moonshot speech. Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. says that despite recent victories, the fight against Russia is far from over. Speaking on Face the Nation Sunday, Oksana Markova said Ukraine's military will continue to liberate areas seized by Russian forces.
Russia still can do a lot of damage, but we don't have any other choice. We will advance. As we said before, we will not surrender, and we will liberate all Ukraine, because this is what we have to do, not only to restore our territorial integrity, but to save all of our people who are under occupation.
Ukrainian forces have advanced in the Kharkiv region, pushing Russian forces out of northeastern territories that they've occupied for months. More than 1,000 square miles in eastern Ukraine have been recaptured. The Kremlin responded with the deadly missile strikes Sunday on a Kharkiv power station and a residential building. For more on the counteroffensive, Deborah Pata reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces have swept through the northeast at breathtaking speed, greeted like conquering heroes with flowers, embraces and tears of joy. The blue and yellow flag flying high in liberated towns and villages across the region as advancing troops push north just 30 miles from the Russian border. It's a humiliating defeat for Vladimir Putin's men, forced to flee, abandoning key supply hubs like Kupiansk and Izium. The Russians were here, said Dmitry Hryshchenko. Then suddenly they started shouting wildly and running away, charging off in their tanks. For those who've lived under occupation, it's been over half a year of hell. I was scared all the time, said Maria Hrihora. I can still see an image of a huge puddle of blood in front of my eyes. And as the Russian troops ran, fearing they would be surrounded and captured, they left behind the usual trail of destruction, devastation, and the possibility of fresh new crime scenes for police to investigate, as they begin the now horribly familiar task of digging up the bodies of civilians killed by Russian soldiers. But as Moscow ordered its troops to withdraw with the face-saving explanation it was to reinforce the eastern front line, they fired off a gruesome parting gift, a missile strike on a thermal power plant that left the area in a partial blackout.
Chief Justice John Roberts defended the Supreme Court's legitimacy at a judicial conference last week. Roberts said, quote, "You don't want public opinion to be the guide about what the appropriate decision is." The Chief Justice called it gut-wrenching to see the barriers around the Supreme Court after a draft opinion on Roe v. Wade was leaked. So for more on this and other matters, CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. She's also a professor at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. Jessica, great to see you as always. So walk us through what is the latest on the court's investigation into who leaked this draft opinion overturning Roe v. Wade?
So there really haven't been that many leaks into the leak, forgive that. And that's as the Supreme Court typically functions. Now, what Justice Gorsuch said is we're going to have a report. He didn't say that report is going to be public. He just said there's a report and I think we'll get it soon. We know in a few things. We know that in the very beginning, it looked like the focus was very logically on the people who had access to the opinion. That means the law clerks. Every Supreme Court justice gets 4 law clerks at least a year who help with the drafting of the opinions, and the justices themselves. We know that there was some reporting that some of the clerks had potentially obtained their own counsel, that they were being asked for their cell phones. But other than that, we really have no idea. And, save the tape for when and if we actually get the report. But I suspect we aren't actually going to know. I think this is going to be one of those We turned over as many stones as we could. This is unique in the court's history, and we don't think it's going to happen again, and we put certain safeguards in place.
No leaks about the leak. Well said, Jessica. I also want to ask you about the Supreme Court is going to be reopening to the public for oral arguments, as the Chief Justice announced. This happens, comes as we see polling near historic lows in terms of public confidence in the court. Public perception isn't meant to shape the justices in theory and their decisions, but do you find it does in practice, or what should we take away from this moment?
It's a great question because on the one hand, the court's legitimacy depends on us thinking it's legitimate. It has nothing to enforce its opinions other than our belief and respect in it. And they have the power of the pen or keystrokes. They don't have an army that supports it. They can't go in there and enforce their decisions with a group of law enforcement officers who are going to say it's this or else. So on the one hand, our view of them is desperately important. On the other hand, we actually don't want them to be dictated by what's popular. They have lifetime appointments because they're supposed to be outside of politics. And oftentimes it is a judge's role to make decisions to protect individual rights, even if those individuals are unpopular. I'm thinking about cases I'm going to teach tomorrow in class dealing with socialists and anarchists. But we do have a problem when the Supreme Court is significantly out of step with public opinion on a variety of different issues. I don't know how broad that problem is, but I know that we're going into an arena where I think we have a very conservative court. We have some big cases coming up next term that starts October 3rd, and we're going to see a court that is not matching the majority public view.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about that because you have public officials kind of weighing in here and kind of raising questions about the credentials of this court. People like Vice President Kamala Harris, who over the weekend in an interview called the Supreme Court a activist court. What do you think she bases that on? And do you think that that's an accurate characterization?
So in all honesty, typically we call judges and justices activists when we don't like their opinions. It's kind of shorthand for us to criticize. Having said that, there is a real definition in there somewhere, and it really is a court that's stepping outside of its role. For instance, a court that is overturning popularly enacted legislation when it really has no basis for doing so. And I think that's what she's getting at. She's getting at the court has kind of very big, you only live once energy, very big, go big or go home. And the court is going to make massive changes in our daily lives in a lot of different areas. Obviously, it already has in terms of abortion, religion, guns. We're going to see more of that. And I think that's what she really means by activism.
Yeah, I mean, I think another item that might raise some questions about this is this analysis that was published by The Guardian that found the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas, who many people are familiar with, she's got connections with over half of the parties that lobbied the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. I know this could be kind of murky, but are there any kind of political or legal ramifications for this?
So I think only political, and Justice Clarence Thomas, I think, is not bothered by that and not legal for a couple of reasons. One, the recusal statute really doesn't apply to, or I should say the judicial code applies to all federal judges except 9, those 9 Supreme Court justices. There is a recusal statute. There is some indication that I would say maybe not with respect to this case, but maybe with respect to the post-election litigation because of her involvement in the 2020 election, that Clarence Thomas should have recused himself, that based on that very broad definition in the statute, that he really should have said, you know what, this raises questions, and that's basically the standard here. Having said that, there will be no, I think, repercussions. I think he's essentially immune to public pressure. I don't think the Chief Justice is going to lean on him. He's not going to be impeached over this. I mean, I really don't think that's realistic at all. And so we're basically left with political pressure, which, as I said, I don't think moves him.
Yeah, and of course, she's someone to watch or someone of interest to those on the January 6th committee. Well, a lot to unpack here with the Supreme Court coming back into session soon. Jessica Levinson, I know we'll be talking to you a lot over the next few months. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
A group of Republican senators led by South Carolina's Lindsey Graham are speaking out against former President Trump's promise to grant pardons to January 6th rioters if he's reelected. Graham told the Hill newspaper that pardons for Capitol rioters would be, quote, a bad idea. He went on to say that granting them would set a bad precedent. Other allies of Mr. Trump in the Senate have come out against the former president's pledge, including Senate Republican Whip John Thune. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, however, is open to the idea. What began as a series of threats against national political figures has worked its way down to the local level. Why the Federal Election Assistance Commission recently allocated security funding to protect public officials, and why many say it's nowhere near enough. You're streaming CBS News.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
This place is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to Satanism and witchcraft and demonism.
Has the church been this divided?
Not in my lifetime. They've been radicalized in their approach to politics.
United in Christ, divided by politics.
We have what I call a cowardly pastor problem because they don't want to get involved in the political situation.
Conservative Christianity and Republicanism have grasped hands in a way that's very unhealthy.
There are churches whose members have divided over partisan politics.
How an evangelical civil war could change the spirit of America.
This was a heavily Christian-influenced attack.
When we have the ability to say that God is on our side, it allows us to justify all kinds of cruelty.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. Here's a look at some of our top stories. Attorneys for former President Trump have objected to the Justice Department's request to continue its review of documents taken from Trump's private Florida residence. Both sides are fighting over the sensitivity of those documents. Plus, Ukraine says Russian forces are hastily retreating from a handful of cities that they've held for months, leaving munitions and supplies behind. Moscow calls the moves part of a regrouping of forces. And mourners are lining up outside St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II. Her coffin will rest there until tomorrow, when it will arrive in London. Danya Bacchus has more from London.
Queen Elizabeth's 4 children, including King Charles III, stood guard at their mother's coffin at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, Scotland, in a ceremony known as the Vigil of Princes.
The Queen, like so many generations of our family before her, found in the hills of this land and in the hearts of its people a haven and a home.
The new monarch acknowledged his mother's deep connection to Scotland in his first address to the Scottish Parliament as king. Earlier in the day, in a solemn procession, the king and his siblings walked behind the hearse carrying the Queen's coffin as thousands lined the streets to pay their respects. King Charles also took time to personally thank well-wishers.
I think it's all very emotional, the fact that he's out so close to his mum's death.
He basically said to us that he had been dreading the moment coming and he was trying to keep everything going.
The Queen's coffin will come back to England on Tuesday, while her remains will lie in state for 4 days. Also Monday, Prince Harry released his first public statement on the Queen's death, calling his granny a guiding compass for the nation. There's word Harry, who stepped back from royal duties in 2020, will not be dressed the same as other family members for the Queen's funeral.
It's very unlikely that we will see Prince Harry in military uniform. Only working members of the royal family wear military uniform. Harry is no longer a working member of the royal family, but that will be painful to him.
Over the weekend, the King's sons and their wives greeted the public together at Windsor Castle, an appearance many hope is a sign of reconciliation. Danya Bacchus, CBS News, Windsor, England.
As the midterms approach, election officials are strengthening security to protect poll workers. The New York Times reports that fences, cameras, and plexiglass are now at polling places in some states. Violent threats against election workers that exploded during the 2020 election have become commonplace. Election officials told the Times the harassment is taking a significant mental toll. Neil Vigdor, the author of that article, joins us now. He covers politics with a focus on democracy for the New York Times. So, Neil, how have security risks changed, and do authorities have any explanation about what led to this?
Hi, Caitlin. Good to be with you. Yes, certainly after the 2020 election, you had, millions of people, refusing to accept the results of the election. That has led to a rise of misinformation, harassment. And the Justice Department actually last year created a task force that investigates and prosecutes people who threaten or try to intimidate election officials. And so far, I think there have been something like 6 or 7 cases that have been made public for that task force. And, you have a lot of these election deniers, partisan audits that have created this kind of cauldron of, ill will towards election officials around the country. And they're really under duress and, are taking a lot of precautions. And emotionally, it's very trying for them.
Yeah, one of the election officials that you spoke to in Colorado, Jenna Griswold, who's the Secretary of State there, kind of described the lengths that she had to go through to get some security. So kind of explain what has to happen in order for an elected official to be given security. What does it look like? And that seems like something that would affect that official's personal life.
Well, that's one of the things, Caitlin, is that a lot of these secretaries of state, they don't have a full-time security detail the way a governor or a lieutenant governor would. So in Colorado, Jenna Griswold, she's a Democrat. She's sparred with a lot of county officials who are Republicans in terms of access to voting machines, some of these partisan audits. And so she has received a lot of threats on social media. She was only getting partial coverage through the Colorado State Patrol. So she went out after February of this year, I believe, and resorted to hiring private security. I think the annual cost is something maybe like $85,000. And a lot of these officials, don't have the resources or the manpower to provide the kind of coverage that they unfortunately need.
That is a lot of money. I mean, this issue of paying for security, do you know which agencies are tasked with doing it and how exactly it's getting funded?
Well, the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal agency, actually issued guidance earlier this year to state and local officials that they could use federal election grant money through the Help America Vote Act on actual security and in combating misinformation. Some folks are using state funds, some are using municipal funds, but there is that authorization there for states and counties to be using the federal grants.
And, Neil, these threats are coming at a time when you have had a number of state legislatures essentially undermining the authority of election officials and in some cases making them criminally or financially liable for any possible errors made on their watch, even if it's not their fault. Are towns and cities having trouble finding people who want these kinds of jobs? I know a lot of these secretaries of state actually have to run for office, but some of the rank and file election workers who are also getting threats. Is there a problem filling these positions?
There definitely is, and one of the kind of fascinating dynamics is that it's not just Democratic election officials that are under duress. There are Republicans as well. Recently, all three election officials in Gillespie County, Texas, which is in the hill country of Texas, a county that Donald Trump won by 59 percentage points. All three of them recently quit, saying, that they were getting death threats and stalked, dealing with all kinds of misinformation. And if you look in Antrim County, Michigan, that's another spot where, again, Republican area, the clerk there, longtime Republican clerk. There was a tabulation error after the 2020 election, and she was vilified by President Trump's supporters. And you look, and this year she's just decided she's not running for re-election.
It's unfortunate for our democracy because a lot of these people are volunteers, regular people just trying to do their jobs and getting these threats. Neil, Victor, thank you so much for your time and your reporting. It's really important and something that we'll be following as we head into the midterms. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
During a campaign rally Sunday night, Pennsylvania Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman slammed his Republican opponent Mehmet Oz for calling abortion murder. Fetterman said abortion rights are on the ballot in Pennsylvania.
But you know what I would do if I was that 51st vote? First, rid of the filibuster. So. Right next, codify Roe. Codify Roe. Right now, we have the numbers to do it, but we're not. Send me to D.C. to make sure you know I will be there to be that vote. Thank you on that.
Dr. Oz's campaign responded by clarifying that Oz stands behind exceptions for rape, incest, and protecting the life of the mother. New Hampshire's Tuesday primary marks the last major political contest ahead of the midterm elections on November 8th. Why Republicans are trying to sabotage one of their own candidates at the last minute, even though he's leading in the polls. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
This place is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to Satanism and witchcraft and demonism.
Has the church been this divided?
Not in my lifetime. They've been radicalized in their approach to politics.
United in Christ, divided by politics.
We have what I call a cowardly pastor problem because they don't want to get involved in the political situation.
Conservative Christianity and Republicanism have grasped hands in a way that's very unhealthy.
There are churches whose members have divided over partisan politics.
How an evangelical civil war could change the spirit of America.
This was a heavily Christian-influenced attack.
When we have the ability to say that God is on our side, it allows us to justify all kinds of cruelty.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before. That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Republicans are ramping up support for a particular candidate in Tuesday's New Hampshire Senate Republican primary in the hopes of setting up its best chance to oust Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan in November. On Thursday, Governor Chris Sununu endorsed State Senate President Chuck Morse, saying he is the best candidate to defeat Hassan. But Morse is actually polling behind retired Army General Don Bolduc, who has backed false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. For more, I want to bring in Dante Scala. He's a professor of political science at the University of New Hampshire and a friend of the program. Dante, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. So let's talk about this New Hampshire Senate race, because you had originally Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan on defense. This was a big target for Republicans. Tell us a little bit about what a challenge from Bolduc might mean. How are Republicans thinking about his chances now?
Republicans don't think a lot of his chances, to be honest. Don Bolduc is the front runner in the New Hampshire Republican primary, but he's a front runner without hardly any of the typical apparatus that comes with a frontrunner's campaign. He has not been running television ads. The basic assumption is that his fundraising is running on empty at this point. He's been, on any traditional metric, he's been behind, except for the polling, which has shown all year that he has name ID statewide among Republicans, and that Republicans in New Hampshire who know him tend to like him. So, and he's been basically campaigning since he lost 2 years ago, also in the Republican Senate primary.
The candidate that a lot of Republicans wanted to run, at least at the national level, was Governor Sununu, and he decided not to. But he did endorse Chuck Morse over Don Bolduc. How is that panning out? Could that boost Morse? Does that have an effect?
I think it's possible it'll have a minor, not a major boost. It's an endorsement that came late, just late last week. And a couple theories about that. One is that a late endorsement helps more because a lot of New Hampshire voters are just tuning in and realizing they have to vote in this late September primary, after the Labor Day holiday, after the summer. The other theory, though, is that there's an awful lot of noise out there now. I mean, ads are being run wall to wall on the local television station here. And will Chuck Morse be able to drive that message about Sununu's endorsement in such a noisy environment? That's what remains to be seen tomorrow, whether New Hampshire voters go to the polls and say, well, it's either Bolduc or it's Chuck Morse.
And Democrats have actually been spending a lot of money across the country in some of these races to support these far-right candidates, kind of hoping to prop them up because they think they're beatable in November. Is that happening in New Hampshire? What's the spending been like there?
Yeah, we're seeing that in two different races. One, we've seen an outside group come into the New Hampshire Senate race, run ads against Chuck Morse, coming from Chuck Schumer's outside group. We've also seen Democrats playing in the 2nd congressional district, where Democratic incumbent Annie Kuster is being challenged. And that's also on behalf of a very conservative candidate. So we are seeing late signs of Democrats playing in primaries here, trying to set up very conservative outsider type candidates, just as we've seen elsewhere in the country.
And I want to talk a little bit about the House race that we're all watching tomorrow, which is in New Hampshire's 1st district. Here you have 2 young former Trump staffers facing off tomorrow. It's become pretty bitter in these final days. Tell us a little bit about that contest.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We've got Matt Mowers, who's in his early 30s. He ran for this seat 2 years ago against Chris Pappas. And his main challenger right now is Caroline Leavitt, who's all of 25, who's built a formidable campaign after serving in former President Trump's press secretary operation. And she has raised a large amount of money, running lots of ads, and has really taken to the fight to Matt Mowers. In addition, there's a third candidate, Gail Huff Brown, a former newscaster, wife of Scott Brown, who ran for the New Hampshire Senate against Jeanne Shaheen several years ago. So it's really a trio of candidates who are all making a strong effort going into Tuesday.
All right, a lot to watch in New Hampshire, as always. Dante Scala, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Arizona Democratic gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs will not participate in a debate with her Republican opponent. Hobbs' campaign manager said in a statement that Republican candidate Kari Lake is a, quote, conspiracy theorist, and said a debate would lead to, quote, interruptions, pointless distractions, and childish name-calling. Instead, the two will participate in a town hall-style event on October 12th, where the candidates will be questioned separately. We're going to take a quick break. But now is a good time to remind you you can stay up to date by downloading our free CBS News app. You can catch live local coverage from across the country from all of our CBS stations. Stay with us, you're streaming CBS News.
original CBS Reports documentary.
This place is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to Satanism and witchcraft and demonism.
Has the church been this divided?
Not in my lifetime. They've been radicalized in their approach to politics.
United in Christ, divided by politics.
We have what I call a cowardly pastor problem because they don't want to get involved in the political situation.
Conservative Christianity and Republicanism have grasped hands in a way that's very unhealthy.
There are churches whose members have divided over partisan politics.
How an evangelical civil war could change the spirit of America.
This was a heavily Christian-influenced attack.
When we have the ability to say that God is on our side, it allows us to justify all kinds of cruelty.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
A new poll finds that a third of U.S. employees are still concerned about COVID-19 exposure in the workplace. 33% of Americans surveyed this July said they were worried about contracting COVID at work. That number is significantly lower than the 51% who reported concern in July of 2020. Among the employees polled, women and Democrats reported the highest amount of worry surrounding the coronavirus in the workplace. And that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
It's important to our nation.
What happened? This country was supposed to be at a moment of reckoning.
It's on Face the Nation.
Senator Scott says he's at the table. Will you come back to it?
Making politics make sense.
Aren't you playing politics with national security?
The why behind the biggest stories.
Are we going to see a hot war in Europe?
Face the Nation with Margaret